Same level. Hi, this is Elliot Fishman, and welcome to our latest, I would say podcast. This is Facebook Live, but this is like a Facebook Live where we're not scheduled because remember we do at 12 o'clock on Wednesday. But today is very special because we have Tina Wells, who's our guest speaker at Hopkins tonight, and we'll be speaking about hot topics for Generation Z and what's hot in the world of how things are changing. So, Tina, it's really great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. What you're going to speak about trends, but most of the people, or almost everyone who's going to hear this, is not going to be there tonight. What do you think the hottest things you're seeing now, the changes that people are doing, and what are we experiencing, and what are we going to see over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend right now is AI. I think it's becoming so mainstream, just the use of this technology in our everyday lives, and I think it's changing all the major systems, right? So it's everything from how we're banking to how we're getting places, and I think it's gone from being this like thing that really cool people do to something we are all involved in. I also think when you're going to science centers and museums, you're seeing it used, and then looking more to AR and VR. That's also a really big trend right now. I think social shopping is a huge trend. People actually making purchases through Instagram and how often we're being marketed to just based on what we're filtering out. And so, I think we'll see a lot of changes to shopping. I was on my Amazon today and getting sold Whole Foods products through Amazon now. So I think just this interesting integration is happening as well.
Well, it's funny because, Amazon, you have to admit it is, I would admit it's incredible, but yeah. Amazon, that now they're talking, as you saw, about doing medicine.
Yeah.
And, if anyone could do medicine, there was a thing today in the paper about Amazon doing banking, then Amazon doing medicine, whether it's, and more than just, filling prescriptions. Of course, anybody can do that. That's just like being a drugstore, but just providing medical care for their employees and for other employees. And, maybe I'll be reading CT scans in CVS places or something.
I think there are all these areas that are ripe for innovation right now, right? And I think you see companies like Amazon really, it's actually interesting to watch how intrigued they are by like the traditional, supermarket or the medical industry, definitely places where we're starting to see innovation, but they're massive, big systems, right? So it's easy to have a startup and say, I'm going to come and make this new thing, but how do you come in and reinvent this industry? It's huge, and it affects everyone. So, I think companies like Amazon have the resources to at least start to test solutions that make sense.
Right, and it's not easy for other companies. I know today I was driving in and I was listening to Bloomberg, and they were reporting that Target reported relatively poor earnings because they're trying to change to match Amazon and match Walmart perhaps, but it's not that easy to change.
No, and it's also not what customers want from you, right? It's all about evolving is a good thing, but when you turn into a completely different person or that's not what the consumer looks for. And so I think, with Target, I actually ran into a suburban Target yesterday and it was being completely remodeled. It looks absolutely beautiful. So I think they're also doing some work on their stores. I think they need to think about what the in-store experience needs to be. And also, I love what Amazon's rolling out in Whole Foods. You can go in, use your Prime, shop, and leave the supermarket. You don't have to wait in line. And so I think, Target's doing a good job of doing, buy and pick up in store, and that's great. But I think figuring out, this is a generation that really wants an in-person experience that is really dynamic. And I don't think we've yet figured out the dynamic shopping experience that's like shopping 2.0.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because even a prior speaker, was from Marion. He was saying that high tech is still high touch because it used to be said like, oh, if we do medicine with artificial intelligence or things or stores, oh no, there's no personal touch to it. But the truth is, people want a good experience. That personal touch, maybe it's overrated, or people don't really provide that personal touch. They're just annoying people, like they're the Target lady on SNL or something. It's kind of like that. Let me say,
I think that's a great point though that he made, and I think. It's interesting. Marriott is one of the few companies, if you think about hospitality and Airbnb, Marriott has really responded to the demands of a younger generation and really started to create exciting product in their portfolio. So, they're definitely taking that, those insights into consideration.
Right, because it's interesting. I may have mentioned to you that one of the things he said that actually has put everybody a buzz here is he was saying, listen, Let me ask you a question. Who came up with the idea of calling where the patients are, or the guests, whatever you want to call them, a waiting room? The waiting room is like, that's like the dumbest thing. That means it's negative.
Yes.
You know, so right now we're sitting around, what do we call it? I mean, you can't call it a lounge, you can't call it a Target, you can't call it Amazon or Whole Foods. What is it that we're going to call it? It's an interesting question. Let me ask you another question. You know, when you get older, you always complain about the people who are younger. And when you're younger, you complain about the people who are older.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've written a lot about it. You've spoken a lot about it. I mean, how do you see the changes in generations? Now, I know we all have different names for different generations, but I mean, it seems that now everyone always says that the prior generation, a bunch of old fogies, and you know, it's like people are saying, well, I walked to school uphill 2 miles in both directions, you know, and everyone says that, but there seems to be some truth to it now that people think there's a different. You think it's a different work ethic? Let me get that to the point.
I think there is a different understanding of what work means, of what work-life balance, or I love to say work-life harmony means. I think it's the first time in history that so many different generations have had to coexist in the workplace. So I think from oldest to youngest, they have such different ideas about what it means to work and what that looks like, you know. And so I just think their culture is different. You know, I'm 37, so I started a company 22 years ago, so I like to say I'm kind of between generations, but, you know, I come from a place where you work, you go home and eat, and you work. You know, your work week, it's like you have 2 days on the weekend, right? But then anything can happen Monday through Friday, and it's probably 80 hours that you're working, and that's just not the younger generation. You know, it's like they don't live to work, you know, they kind of work to live, and that's it. And I think it's going to start to create really interesting conversations around, you know, this idea of 40 hours, and it's not even about 40 hours anymore. You have people who talk about 4-hour work weeks and doing less, and how do you do less, and how are you more efficient and more effective. And so I think the concept of working 40 hours is something that's going away, but then how do you pair that with long term? If you really want to be successful at something, where's the 10,000 hours coming from, and how are you starting to master things? And then you look at the number of not just jobs, but careers that younger people will be in. I think it's average 7 careers. How do you actually master something? You know, and I think about my group of friends, we've all been doing the thing we're doing for at least 10 plus years. You know, we're not very transient at all. You know, if you're in marketing, you might move between companies, but you're a marketer. You're not a marketer who opens a restaurant in 3 weeks, you know, and so the younger generation, they're very fluid about, well, I went to school for this, but I'm really going to do that, and that's not interesting, but this really is. And so, you know, I think those are going to be some interesting challenges, because so one of my friends said to me the other day, who is the plumber in the future? Like, who is the plumber that knows your house, who, you know, has done this for 30, 40 years? Who is that person, you know? Or are we moving to a place where technology will fill in the gaps a little bit, you know, and what does that look like?
Well, we have the same concern in medicine, where, you know, we need to have incredible cures, because, I mean, we were talking before about how physicians in training, because of things like the work week and the hours, are doing 1/3 less surgeries in training. And, you know, at the end of the day, the more surgeries you do, typically, the better you are. You're looking at more films, the more experience you are reading a CT. But if you're reading less, at the end of the day, you know, it's not a matter of quality over quantity. You need quality, but you need quantity. You need to see a lot of things. And it's interesting, as you say, is how do you balance that out? You know, like, for example, we're at Hopkins, so you have promotions process, you know, you have bonuses, you have how do you pay people. You know, we need to be here 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
You know, someone needs to be here when it's not convenient. Someone needs to work at night, because when patients are sick, patients don't get sick between 8 and 5. And, you know, it's an interesting, particularly when people, you know, as you say, in the old days, you know, work was everything. And that probably wasn't a good thing. But there needs to be some happy medium, perhaps.
It does, but I always think that the pendulum starts to swing in the other direction at some point as well. And so, you know, I think there are going to be repercussions, like you say, from people who just want to work a very finite amount of time, and where are the experts coming from? Who are the experts that are really going to deeply understand certain fields, and what does it look like without that expertise?
Well, the one thing I know it's helped, not that I'm getting older, but people who are older who have skill sets, now, fortunately, with health, people not going to living longer and healthier, and they continue working. People who have a lot of being older is like a Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett wants to come here. I'll hire him tomorrow. I can stay in Omaha. But, people who have experience now are more valued than ever, regardless of the field.
It's very true.
Be it plumbers or radiologists. But how do you, I know you deal with a lot of companies. How do you explain to people, let's say my generation, how do you deal with those people coming out now without tearing your hair out or something?
How do I deal with people in your generation or younger people?
Both. How should I deal with people? Because we're recruiting people whose expectations, if I give them what my expectations are, they're not going to take the job. So I have to come up with something that makes it seem like, oh, no, we don't work very hard here. We're here. It's like we're on a cruise ship. No.
What I found works is always putting a little goal in front of them to say, we're going to get here. I do more reviews now than ever. Instead of annual reviews, we have these like quarterly check-ins, right? So frequently people want to understand, like, how am I progressing? How am I doing? And so that was one of the things and the whole idea of feedback and having the ability to have conversations. So I think it's, instead of saying, in a year we'll talk about what the next thing is, it's really charting together this like engaged plan of, this is how we're going to keep moving forward. So if you're interested in learning about something else, we're going to talk about a client where you have this opportunity. Again, that's really difficult when you need someone to really become a practitioner focused on one thing. Then it goes back to, well, why did they get into that thing? Are they interested in it? Do they see it as a job? Do they understand the requirements of the job? So I think on the front end, what are we doing in college to prepare them for what the career requirements are going to be?
Yeah, I know you do a lot of teaching like at Wharton. I think one of the big challenges is that the curriculums are still the same as when I went to college.
I think that there are a lot of industries that I don't want to say they have to get younger. I think they have to really look at the opportunities with technology to be disruptive and try new things. Or where I've seen it's been really successful is partner with people who are being disruptive and bring, internally what makes sense.
Well, if you want to hear the rest of the story, 5 o'clock tonight, Chevy Taste Auditorium, and Tina will be speaking at 5:01. And with that, Tina, thanks very much for your advice, and we really appreciate it. See you tonight.